Hey you guys, welcome back to another Season 2 walkthrough on High Mythic Plus. This one's going to be on Freehold 24 Tyrannical. So there's not much to say except let's get into it. The first thing first is I always tell my group to not move right here. During the bubble, if anyone takes a step forward, to the side is fine, as you can see now Leia went right here. But if they take a step forward, then the pack comes down the stairs and starts early and ends up like right in your way, right up here. So it's pretty nice if nobody moves. Because as you can see, they come down right at the right moment here, and I can just throw a shield or throw some kind of ranged ability without being meleeed by 3 big beefy mobs while I'm trying to gather all this. So this is the pretty standard first pull. It's nice to group them on the left mob here. The crack shot is the reason why we do this. That guy doesn't really move easily. You can kind of line him over here on the stairs if you want later in the pull. But otherwise it's pretty hard to move him without knocking him. The things to look out here for as a tank are this disease that I just dispelled. You'll probably see it pop up again, but it's a healing reduction. You want to get rid of that if possible right off the bat. Take the healing balm, of course, and then otherwise you just dodge the Iron Tide Enforcer's frontal, the backhand. This time around, they do have an animation on it too, which makes it a lot nicer than before. In addition to that, the throw they used to have from BFA is no longer a thing. Thank God. They used to throw the tank at a ranged player. So that's the standard first pull. I would definitely use some big CDs there to survive it. Everything in this dungeon does a lot of physical damage. It seems like even more so than before in BFA. This is a pretty typical second pull. We Mind Soothe through those 2 packs. You can also Shroud through the Rogue. If you don't have a Rogue or a Priest or Invispot, and you just want to hold W, then I advise pulling the right pack that we skipped there. This pull is pretty tough, especially coming out of a pull where you just use all your CDs. These 2 Enforcers deal a ton of tank damage, and the dogs really don't help either. Their bite is pretty nasty. You saw me pulling the patrol right there. That is because it's kind of hard to grab them at a good time otherwise. I'd almost rather just pull them with the boss every time, but their really slow patrol pattern makes it so that they're kind of hard to grab with the boss if you wait longer than at that moment. This key was done on the Incorporeal affix. It's a new affix. Just make sure that people in your group are aware of the affix and they have the right CC talented before the key. That's about all you can really do. I take Turn Evil as a paladin, as like a last resort measure against that affix. But it's largely on the DPS and healer. You can see the first boss is spawning off to the right now. That's because we finally finished the 4-pack, the double enforcer pack. Oh, sorry, my voice is still a little bit gone. Okay, so this boss, the first things first is if you make sure the group knows to not attack before the tank attacks, the first shot will always go on the tank. Especially if they're like sitting back here, like kind of far away from your character. That makes sure that the boss is only in combat with you for a split second. It's pretty important in high keys because, as you can see, his shot does a ton of damage, and if you pick someone twice in a row, they're gonna die. So here you see he charges, and then he'll shoot people 3 times in a row. So the first one went on Tollboker here. Second one goes on Biggie. If that would have been the same person twice in a row, they would have been dead. I actually laid on hands. Or Biggie laid on hands himself. I just laid on him. Oh, this is a perfect example. So Hasty's about to get shot. That's the first shot between charges. Looking at his health bar here. I lay on hands him immediately. And then he instantly gets shot again. And that definitely would have killed him. I think we both of us wogged him actually, and then he gets shot a 3rd time. That is actually unreal unlucky, but we actually had counterplay for it. That's pretty hype actually. So the reason why I pulled the boss over here, by the way, is because where you phase the boss at 75% health, it decides where the parrot will start flying to. So if you put him over here, the parrot flies all the way over the arena over here, and then should be set up for a good pattern of flying in this kind of arc every time, and then doing a charge through this part of the arena. So it should set him up for largely that same pattern for the rest of the fight, because you faced him at this spot here-ish. Now the reason why we pull the boss over here in P2 is because this is kind of like a safe spot for melee away from the bird poop and the charge at the same time, as long as ranged players are playing in the middle of the arena here to bait the poops. Now I used to know a lot about this boss in BFA because, oh, I got pooped on because my healer died there, unfortunately. But this boss has changed quite a bit since BFA. He used to poop 2 and sometimes 3 times between charges. Now I think he only poops 1 time. It should technically be a little bit easier. And also these shots that the boss does still do insane damage. Like it's already like almost one-shotting on 24 Tyrannical. But they are no longer line of sightable or rangeable. So now you just have to deal with the damage. I don't know what we're going to do on 26. We'll have to do some big thinking for that one. Some nice trick is you can pre-freedom someone getting pooped on and they will take no damage from the poop. So if you're having your healer, because we set up the bird in this pattern like this that I talked about, if your healer is playing around this area in the arena somewhere, they are probably going to take the majority of the poops, or whoever is baiting. And if you pre-freedom that player here, like after the charge, then they will take no damage. I think we started doing that at this point in the boss. Oh, not that one though. Hasty is getting destroyed this fight. The boss wants him dead. So I'm kind of just observing the boss fight pattern as I'm tanking here. So we pre-freedom Hasty on that one. He took no damage. Since we have 2 paladins, we're kind of rotating. Here's the bird charge. I'm going to freedom Hasty after this charge. During all this, notice that the me and the melee player are standing on the outside of the arena, facing inward toward the boss, so that we bait shots away from the ranged players. Everyone's kind of in this spread out pattern because of those shots. They are big frontal cones. But yeah, this boss is actually very difficult. I think if we weren't BFA veterans, all of us doing high keys, I think this would be one of our tougher dungeons for sure. But lucky for you guys, I've done this place hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times. So look at that pre-freedom tech. That's pretty nice, actually. This the new talent for freedom is called Unbound Freedom, I think. Rep Pally and Prop Pally both have it, and is insanely good this season. All right, so we're going after the first boss. We're on the bridge here. This is some good tech. This solo enforcer is very inefficient. He's just chilling right here on the bridge. Nobody wants to pull that guy. Enforcers also have that Shattering Bellow ability that does AoE damage to the group now. So if you have any kind of Night Elf or Hunter or Mage or Rogue, they can pull them off to the side and Viz and then join you on the bridge. Like so. Now back in, some of you might remember this, but back in BFA, it used to be a typical pull to pull some of this stuff here. I assume people might be doing that in pug groups still, but if you have any kind of organization, I advise skipping all that. Those mobs are pretty tough and they're not the most efficient mobs. So you can either just jump where I jumped there, or you can Mind Soothe, you can Shroud, you can sap the closest mob. Let's actually go back and look at that. So the way you jump is you kind of go over this little piece of wood. I always kind of like use that as my landmark. Just go directly over there, just jump across it. And the mob that you'd sap is this duelist. The neutrals don't care about you. They will not attack you unless you attack them. But this duelist is the one that'll likely get body pulled by the average group. It's also pretty dangerous to jump there when the rats are pretty close, like I did. Like that was actually kind of risky. Should have waited. So the Mind Soothe goes up. I like to jump down here. This is a pretty typical pull. I pull these rats. I pulled these 3 mobs and these 2 mobs. Now this guy is pretty annoying, the Swabby. There's only one of them that you have to pull in the whole dungeon, and this is the one. And also the Brute is pretty unique. There's only 2 Brutes you'll pull total. This guy, and there's one over by the Trothak boss that I'll show you later too. These Brutes actually do a no cast time AoE around them that does a ton of damage. So if you're ever wondering why you and the melee are just getting owned, that's probably the brute. Now the swabby here that I just pulled, he isn't too bad, but he does this annoying can't jump mechanic. Excuse me for my voice. And the only thing you should know about the swabby is that if you ever die and reset this pull, he will then be bugged just hanging here from this rope for the rest of his life, and he cannot move. So you have to actually fight right here if you ever wipe and come back. It's really annoying. Now, the only other thing I want to talk about in this pull is the little rats on pull. You'll probably die to this at some point and be like, oh man, I got to worry about that. They give you these these bite stacks, and these are healing reduction stacks. So I actually have 3 of these right now. And I think I bubbled them off here pretty quick. Yeah, I just pressed bubble on that global because I do not want to die to no healing. But if you're not a paladin or anything, you can also just kite them out. The little rats die pretty quick. So ring of peace on pull, or just like press sweep or something. Some kind of AoE stun would do it too. The big rat also puts out these traps, so you can clear them with freedom. Druids can clear them for free with just shapeshift of any form. Also, shamans and ghost wolf for some reason can also do that. But yeah, after all, knowing all that, the real thing that you have to worry about is this brute just ranking you. This guy does a ton of damage. So you can see me tracking his. See if we can see it on my UI. I think it's called Earthshaker. Spell name. So you can see his Earthshaker is about to come up right here. That's the spell CDs on nameplates week where I use from Relo for this, by the way. And since it's about to come off CD, he's going to cast it instantly. Boom, he just did it. Can't really tell because he had no cast time. Let's see how much damage it did. Right there. Okay, so I'm a paladin and I have lots of CDs going. Didn't really do too much to me, but if I had melee in the group, which I don't, they probably would have gotten chunked pretty good. It's just good to know about because going higher in fortified keys, you'll probably start to notice it. Alright, so I jumped right there, I stunned myself. I like to pull this deckhand that's sitting in the back of the bar right here first, so it gives him a chance to like run around and get grouped with his friends. And then I like to chain these into the boss. The neutral mobs don't really do anything, they're just kind of free count. They're worth a tiny bit of count. And then we pull the second boss. So Captain Eudora is the focus here. She is the target until she dies. She shoots you a couple times on pull, and then she immediately jumps. She has 4 jump spots. It's either here. The danger here is watching out for the patrol that comes up to here. Make sure you keep an eye on that. She goes over here, or off the screen over on that X somewhere. Every time she jumps, she will start firing to her left, to her right. You always want to run into her from like this direction in this case. Or if you're super fast, you can like watch her ticks. After she fires here, you can cross and avoid the next tick. Now, the bartender is throwing brews on the ground this entire fight. I have the weak aura pack I'm using shows which brews are which, so the haste is coming right now. Blizzard actually added some animations to these this season too, so that you can tell. So haste again is dropping down. The blue swirlies are always good. It's either haste or crit, and then the green swirly is the bad brew. The bad brew is important actually though because it hits the bosses and does a lot of damage. It puts a big dot on the bosses. So you can see me positioning them in the bad brew here. Looks like we're getting a second one. This is really good luck. Try to position them without getting hit by barrel smash. Somehow I was able to do it there. Here's a crit buff coming down. So someone was telling me, I don't think the bosses can get buffed by the crit or the haste brew anymore. There's the jump. Be careful of that grape shot. So you can see me like moving the bosses out of the brews, but I don't think you even have to worry about that anymore. Here's another bad brew. This is really good. You can see them kind of getting chunked by that dot after they take the bad brew. And it scales with key levels, so it's super, super important to get these on the bosses when you can. The only other notable mechanic here that I haven't talked about yet is the blackout barrel, and this is probably actually the most important mechanic. As a paladin, you can pre-freedom the target and kind of ignore the mechanic, so it's going out right now. You can see it's let's see who's targeting. It's targeting Biggie over here. So what I'm gonna do is pre-freedom Biggie if I'm paying attention. I think he also freedoms himself in this case. Oh, neither of us did. So I put it on him. I put freedom on him after. You saw the debuff pop up on my frames just briefly right there. And so the barrel then would go away completely if you freed him after. If you pre-freed him, the barrel kind of sits on the ground for the rest of the fight. And then you can just like funnel off of it if you're a dot class. Alright, so after Eudora dies, well, let's talk about the barrel a little bit more first. So the blackout barrel is kind of tricky. If it gets thrown on a player and they move, then it'll actually hit the next closest person to the spot it landed, I believe is how it works. So if you ever get blacked out as a tank, that's the only reason it happened. Is somebody like tried to get away from it, and then you just happen to be the next closest person. And that can wipe the group, unfortunately, too, because if the tank's disoriented, you know that's never a good thing. Alright, so after Eudora dies, I go and pull this pack. This is pretty standard. These harpooners will be big danger in high keys, though. Be warned. So the goal with pulling this pack onto Raoul is so that you can still use the bad brew to damage the pack. Or just cleave it down with a fairly easy boss, since he's alone now. So you can see we're doing our best to keep all the mobs in that bad brew. That was pretty good. Here's another blackout barrel coming. Another solution to blackout barrel is using Tiger's Lust after the barrel goes on somebody. You cannot pre-freedom a Tiger's Lust, but it can be used as like an after the fact ability. Druids once again can shapeshift it. I think Shaman can Ghost Wolf it. I'm not positive on that one. Or you can bop it off, but if you have a Paladin, you can also freedom it, obviously. Otherwise, the barrel is kind of annoying, and people will probably die once in the fight from it with one of the really bad overlaps. Alright, so here the nice thing about Freehold is that you can kind of go wherever you want. I would just avoid pulling more than one harpooner at a time. I pull as few harpooners as I can this route because of how they scale and how dangerous they are in Fort later. So this pull has 0 harpooners. It just has a couple casters that you have to kick Frost Blast on. You can see me kicking one right here. Oh, it actually went off. And then the other thing is you have to stop the fixates from the scrappers, I believe. And you can just use anything to stop those fixates. Kick Frost Blast, stop fixates with blinds, disorients, stuns, knocks. Well, actually, knocks don't stop fixates, but everything else does. And that's it. Just make sure you pop something big going into that pull. That's definitely a big tank damage pull. But then again, every pull in here is. Here comes a patrol. I like to get rid of the patrol in this case. If the patrol wasn't here, I would have pulled this pack instead and gone into the arena. And I'm kind of avoiding this pack because it has harpooners, casters, and everything dangerous in there. So this patrol's pretty good. It's only got one harpooner. And it's kind of in the way. Well, it's kind of just a good pack to pull in general. What we're doing here is cleaving down this brine scale and then chaining this pack into the next one, I believe. Because I'm feeling good about my defensives. And I want to start RP as well. So the faster you can start RP, the better for time and the key. We're now in the arena. Somebody should go talk to the guy to start it. The evokers are on it. And you can see there's a full 60 seconds of RP now. So the pig will spawn in a minute. And so now we're just doing things to efficiently get count while we progress the dungeon with the RP. Nothing too crazy in these pulls, just the harpooner. I'm tracking its cooldown on this harpoon right there as well. Everybody in the group probably should, because the combos of getting pulled into the pack while AoE is going on is pretty bad. That's where people will die. And then this is the only other brute that I talked about earlier. So this guy's the second one. He's the one fighting these training dummies right here. He's with the knife juggler. Just be aware that he is in this pool. He's doing the AoE around him. So we're chilling, we're just getting some count. RP is happening in 12 seconds. So when the pig jumps down, what you can do is have a keybind set to interact with target. So it simulates you like right clicking on the pig, which can be hard if you're also trying to move around with it at the same time. So what you can do with this keybind is just click the pig, hold down your mouse and follow it while spamming the key, and it makes it really easy to catch it. So I bind my interact with target to right bracket on my keyboard because I'll never use that for a keybind. This is another pretty standard pull, just a crusher plus this pack up here. There is a harpooner in this pull too. I think the second time he harpoons someone is usually pretty rough with the overlap of something. It might be the crusher's ability or it might be the going bananas ability. So it looks like he's about to harpoon. His ability is off CD. I think he harpooned Biggie in there right now. Either that or the late animation got him, because I also got hit by that. The Crusher's AoE is always going off, like, the animation shows up halfway through its cast. It's pretty annoying. Yeah, the ground shatter, that one. So we caught the pig. Now the turtle should be spawned in the arena. Be careful where you run here. I almost pulled him right here. But we finished out this pull in between the RP sessions. Now we're ready to do some more stuff. I recommend pulling something with the turtle. It can be a pack, it could be a crusher, it could be two crushers if you want. I typically like to pull this crusher with the turtle, and then pull this crusher with the pack up here, up to the left, after the turtle's dead, in between the boss spawning. In this case, I did two crushers, I think, just for fun. Fun, quote unquote. This is going to hurt quite a bit on Fort. On Tyrannical, I think this is totally fine, depending on the tank class. And if you have several melee in your group, it might be a decision factor as well for not pulling two crushers with the turtle. But it's kind of fun to be in an arena as a tank fighting, you know, several big ass mobs. Good feeling to survive this kind of thing. This is a good key. Freehold is a good key. So as you can see, I'm kiting in a circle here just to constantly get out of their ground effects and also dodge shells. But an important thing is you don't want to play in the middle ever, because every time Mr. Ludwig spawns a turtle shell, he sends it directly through the middle of the arena, as you can see him facing here. And also he spawns turtle shells based on his missing HP. So if you're damaging him really fast, he's going to spawn shells back to back to back to back and just never attack you. But you'll notice, like, as you attack him, he spawns them at pretty regular rates. It's also important to know, and I'm sure you guys have all figured this out by now, but if you leave this circle for more than half a second in this arena, you'll get food thrown at you and instantly die. And that applies to anybody in the group. If someone dies during the turtle, they can release and try to come back, but as soon as they get anywhere like this close to the arena, I think they get food thrown at them, like just running back as well. So it's pretty hard to get back. I don't even know if you can get back. They should make it so you probably just can't release, honestly. But yeah, be careful. Even if you get knocked back to, like, let's say right here, you can run back into the arena really fast before getting food thrown at you most of the time. If you have no movement speed ability, you'll probably get food thrown, I think, but just try to do your best to not ever get pushed out. Alright, so now we got the final RP moment where the boss is spawning. So this is where I would have maybe pulled a crusher with this pack, but I just pulled this pack solo. So I told these guys to kill the Bryant scales so we can just chain the rest into the boss here. Speed this up a tiny bit. So I'm waiting for my group to get in. It's very important that everybody's inside because someone will instantly die if they are not. The food again. And yeah, we're pulling these with the boss. I'll also pull the neutrals over there with the boss at some point. I'm kind of setting up so I pull them when the Shadow Priest has Shadow Crash available, which is pretty often. But it's just a nice brief funnel for them and kind of for free if they can only spend one global dotting the neutrals. Now, this fight is pretty intensive for everybody in the group to know what's going on. So this shark is the main part of the fight, the one with the swordfish shark, whatever it's called. This one's not that consequential. In fact, I recommend you kind of taking this one as the tank. And what I mean by taking it is being the closest target at some point and then guiding him with the boss in this like area away from the range for a little bit. But the range, somebody has to take this shark away from melee, especially if it spawns a melee, and kind of kite him around and get him stuck in these blood pools every now and then. And then just be aware that the boss jumps to the shark right there and picks it up, and anybody in that charge will take damage. It'd probably be a one-shot in higher keys as well. You see me taking this hammerhead shark because it's out for a very short amount of time, and the boss will jump to it, and that way the boss doesn't have to move very far as well. You can see at the same time this shark went back out. The ranger taking this one. If he was still sitting here, I would have moved the boss very quickly away from the shark so that the range would have an easier time of getting aggro on it. Aggro, quote unquote. And that's the main meat and bones of the fight. The other thing that he does is Ripper Punch, and that just targets the closest melee player. And if there's no one in range at the time, then he just hits the tank or a ranged player if they're closer. So Nat actually got the Ripper Punch there. Looks like you can cauterize it. Cauterizing Flame. Or you can dwarf it or bop it. But yeah, let's just observe the range players kite the shark. These are all BFA veterans, as I said. They know what's going on. This fight's pretty challenging, though, if you don't know how to deal with the sharks, for sure. So I'm trying to take this shark. This one will get picked up pretty quick. Rearm is the ability where he jumps to the shark right there. Boom. Now his spell queuing is kind of weird here. So he used to never do this, but now sometimes he throws both sharks back to back after a tornado. That can be very dangerous, especially if they go on the same player. I'm kind of hoping they fix this to not be like that anymore. You can see the swordfish shark out there being kited. He rearms, he picks it up. Ripper Punch is coming out right now. It goes on the melee player. Sharknado. If you're a rogue, by the way, or a paladin, or anything with long arms, you can kind of sit at the edge of the tornado there and still hit the boss without being hit. Here's his double spell queue. My auto marker, by the way, does mark these sharks if you mouse over them, and I'll put that in the description if you want it. But yeah, you can kind of see I always keep the boss on the side of the arena away from my range players to give them a lot more real estate to play. And then I'll adjust based on where the shark comes out after every tornado. So like here, you see me trying to pick up this hammerhead shark again. Still in my range, not to worry about that one. Yeah, this fight's pretty challenging for sure. I just used wings the last 8% of the boss. That was a big mistake. Because there's a hard pull coming up after. I also forgot to pull the neutrals, so now I'm pulling them. Someone just died to a shark. Things are going south, boys. This is intended. This is intended. So basically, I can farm back wings here. Totally meant to do this. But yeah, basically, you just pull those at some point during the fight. So after the boss, you can run over here and skip this pack in many ways. You can technically mind soothe it, although I think we fail here. The easier way is to go all the way around the other side of this area and jump up these stairs right here. And you can jump onto this bridge just past all this trash without pulling it, without anything else, with on a mount. But we attempt to mine soothe. I think I or somebody else pulls. It looks like I pulled. I'm not really sure why that happened that time. It's been working for me pretty consistently other times. You can also shroud it. You can warlock gate from that bridge to that bridge. You can do that with the first bridge as well, in the instance. But yeah, there's about 23% trash over here, I think is what it is. So what I'm doing here is I'm pulling all this. This is probably not the move on fortified keys. This pull is really, really tank heavy. You have to assign kicks to these two Stormcallers, X and Square. Their Thundering Squall is, I think, what it's called, is extremely lethal for the group. The Lightning Bolts aren't too bad right now, but they will be in high keys as well. And then the most important thing for you to know about as a tank is this officer, the guy on the horse, is your arch nemesis, and his oiled blade is insane. So that's my primary focus in this pull. Watching the officer, I'm tracking his oil blade cooldown, so it looks like he does it like 5 seconds into the pull. He's about to cast it right now. Boom. There's the debuff on me. It's a magic dispel. Your healer has to be aware of it. They have to dispel you, because until they do, you really can't be healed, and it also trucks you really hard. So I'm sitting at like 40% health here with wings and everything going. Sentinels up and everything. So that ability trucks. I do not recommend pulling this much on Fort. Now, one thing you can do as a paladin at least is bubble and spell ward to avoid it. But even so, it's good to be aware of. Now, the other thing from BFA is these painful motivation casts aren't nearly as beneficial anymore for you. It makes all the mobs like hit 3 or 4 key levels higher because they gain 50% damage, and they don't really take nearly enough dot damage as they used to from the buff. In BFA, you would let painful motivation go off, and it would basically one-shot everything. So we're finishing up this pack. I think in higher keys, what we'll end up doing is invising past it and doing the bomb strat for that trash as well. And I'll tell you what the bomb strat is here in just a second on the boss. Now, in pug keys, what you're probably going to have to do is pull this pack before you engage the boss, because they do pull with the boss combat. But a strat here is having someone with Night Elf or Rogue Mage Hunter pull this pack first, then you engage the boss, and then they invis to drop combat, and the pack resets in the middle. So that's what we're gonna do with the Shadow Priest player here. He just Night Elves right now. Now we're fighting the boss solo for a little bit. Now this strategy is pretty advanced. That will do it 60% on the boss, because that's when he enters phase 2. But it is really, really valuable, and if you can have some sort of organized group do it, then it is super worth it. It's harder these days too than it was in BFA, because now this boss does a huge AoE group damage mechanic. This Whirling Dagger does a ton of damage now. And it doesn't do much in P1 because it only hits one target, but in P2 he starts hitting all 5 players, I believe. The only counterplay to it is if you have someone with Night Elf or Vanish or Greater Invis, press it as they're getting targeted by the first dagger in P2, and then I don't think anybody gets the dagger. So that's the only cheese we know of so far. So the way this fight works is people have to stop this fixating Grenadier with some kind of CC, ideally. This comp actually doesn't have too much for it. We just basically have Hodge, a couple knocks, and landslides. We don't have like a consistent CC, but Hunter Trap is really nice for it. Paralysis is really nice for it. Something that'll just keep it still for its entire lifespan is really nice. This Cannon Barrage mechanic is pretty important to know about as well. You can see Hasty execute this perfectly right here. So Hasty gets the mechanic, he drops 1, 2, and then 3 circles in the same spot, and then he moves over here for the 4th and 5th circles. And that's like the most efficient way of dealing with it as a ranged player. You can drop 3 and then 2 circles without having to move very much. And that's pretty important for what's coming up at 60% as well. So we're dealing with the incorporeal affix right there. I go and Hodge the Grenadier for my group. Grenadier. I don't know how to say that. There's a cannon barrage on Natalea. You can tell everybody's just completely veteraned out in this dungeon. They just know how to deal with every mechanic. All right, so 60% P2 starts. This is the important part of this cheat, or this strategy, I mean. This saber comes out first in P2. So you want to dodge the saber, and at the same time you run to a stacked marker location over here. I marked it star for my group. Then I also had a second marker diamond. I think this makes it really simple. So we stack up for saber, we run over as soon as he starts, we dodge. And then I pull the pack, we all stack on star. And we all bomb the pack. As we slowly walk this direction, in the direction of the markers that I put on the ground, as long as you're out of these swirlies by the third tick, then you are good, and these mobs are going to get destroyed. You see us just slowly backing up. Boom, boom, boom. Everything's dead. That's the optimal way of dealing with it. However, in Dragonflight, this is also super hard because you can see the whole group just gets chunked by the boss mechanic here. The whirling daggers. And that is going to be a big challenge in high keys. So you almost have to have big defensives going into this bomb strat in P2. And it makes it pretty hard to consistently do the rest of the trash on the island as well. I'm going to have to think pretty hard about this. I'm sure we'll see some really good strats in TGP, hopefully from my team as well. I've had to bomb everything pretty efficiently without dying to that whirling dagger. But yeah, now the strat should be to stack as a group. If you're not doing the bombing stuff in P2, stack as a group and move from like this location to this location to this location with each bomb set. So you could put like, let's say you're all stacked right here on me. You can put 3 bombs right here, 2 right here, and then end up right here for the next part of the phase. That way everybody's stacked up for healing and not leaving fire in the entire arena, like I'm sure you see in a lot of your pugs. It's nice to move together with the bombs for space. We're kind of YOLOing it right now. It's not too crazy. Let's see. I guess we do stack up right here. So we're stacking up. We're moving together. This is ideal. This is really good for your melee players too. I throw a sack on Hasty right there because the group damage is wild. I don't think I end up bombing the last pack in this run during the boss, but if you feel like you're safe to do so, then you definitely should. Alright, so 30%. He also makes it so he does double damage with his abilities. So it makes the dagger even more scary. So here he goes. You can see everybody's just getting absolutely destroyed. This boss is going to be nuts in high keys. I'm not a big fan of the scaling. I think they need to nerf the daggers a little bit. But yeah, that is Harlan Sweete and High Tyrannical. And then we're just going to finish off this pack after for safety. We had 3 minutes, so I figured, you know, might as well not risk it because this boss is so hard. We have all this extra time, let's just go ahead and kill it solo. But it would have saved about 30, 40 seconds if we killed it with the boss mechanic. This poll does not have an officer. It's pretty easy. Basically just dodge the blade barrages as best you can. You dodge the sea spout from the oarsmen. And that's it. All right, that's it. That is Freehold 24 Tyrannical. Let me know if you guys noticed anything I missed from this dungeon. This is an oldie, one of my favorite dungeons ever. I'm not a big fan of the updates they made for it for Dragonflight, but I still enjoy running it this season. I think it's a nice nostalgia hit, honestly. But thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next guide.